All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Dan's Astrology. I'm your host Dan today. I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Pisces, which is happening amongst a number of other transits in the same sign, meaning that Pisces is fairly heavily loaded with Mars in Pisces and Mercury retrograde, which will be stationing direct shortly after this new moon. So I'm kind of considering to just sort of lump all this stuff together as a new moon in Pisces with Mercury retrograde stationing direct with Mars as well. And not at all, also keep in mind that we just had eclipse season. The next eclipses will be happening in the summertime, the end of summer in Virgo season. There will be a solar eclipse, but we have the Pisces Virgo axis, and we're having a new moon in Pisces on the heels as eclipse season winds down. And obviously, it's been a bit of a doozy, and I have to just, if you're watching this, bear with me because I have to admit that with all the stuff going on in the world, um, my level of enthusiasm for making astrology videos is kind of low right now, but I figure I'll take a shot at it anyways. The main thing, rather than trying to tackle all the really heavy stuff, first of all, to ground it in the realities of day to day life. Um, we're in spring here. We're approaching the we're at the third decan of Pisces, right? Third decan of Pisces marks this point where we have the Aries equinox point, where the Saturn and Neptune conjunction has recently passed this point, and is in Aries right now, meaning that for all the difficulties associated with Pisces, at least we don't have Saturn and Neptune there. However, the whole point of this is that all these planets in Pisces are eventually going to make a forward motion, push into Aries. And as I say, once we get Mars into Aries, conjoining that Saturn and Neptune conjunction, that to me sounds like it's going to be fairly rough. So I'm kind of trying to psych myself up and mentally prepare myself for that one. But as it is, today we have a new moon in Pisces, and I was thinking about this popular technique of using the astrology with tarot and the 36 minor arcana or pip cards. And what we have is, if you look at this, we have would be the first decan of Pisces, this would be the second decan of Pisces, and this would be the third decan of Pisces. And we have the sun here at this one where we have the rainbow of cups and the couple and the children, just like the happy family looking up in this, like it's a pie in the sky situation. And there, something about this is it reminds me of the idea of the dream, right? There's a certain kind of hazy daydream kind of fantasy perhaps before the reality check that seems to be coming with Saturn and Neptune. And there's something about this card that seems like you're still kind of tripping a bit, or that you are, something might be concluding or coming to an end, but you're still kind of dreaming about what could be. I mean, is a 10. 10 comes at the end, and when it comes to this tarot deck, it's a nicer 10 than, let's say, the 10 of swords, which is a guy who's flat out dead on the ground with a bunch of swords on his back, or the 10 of wands, which is the lord of oppression, a guy carrying a heavy burden. These people seem to be less oppressed, less burdened, less defeated than some of the other 10 cards in the tarot deck. So that at least isn't so bad. And however, there's something about it, about if there's the comforting fantasy of this maybe evaporating away, perhaps, right? There's also the idea of the fact that we have a Mercury retrograde, and the Mercury retrograde is reversed its way all the way into the first decan at this point, and going back to shows the guy with his back turned to the viewer, and there's a sense of not wanting to be here, wanting to make a change, wanting to do things differently, wanting to vamoose perhaps, and a certain dissatisfaction. There's also the disability, or the detriment of Mercury and Pisces. Mercury doesn't want to be in this sign, and yet it has to be stuck here, go around, redo some things. And there's something about this where there are changes being made at the local level. For example, there has been an attempt. Apparently, our local provincial government is abolishing daylight savings time. And, you know, there's also, I guess it's encouraging that the structure of our society, down to how we keep times on our clocks, is not some fixed thing that we can't fiddle around with and change. That we can always, if we don't like something like daylight savings time, we can always adjust it and change it. And perhaps we may have larger ambitions, like we would like to abolish slavery, or we would like to abolish hate and crime, or discrimination, or unfair different forms of fraud and corruption in our society. But for now, we have to, we'll take our victories where we can, and we're abolishing here in British Columbia daylight savings time. And there's something about this which it feels to me like, with the astrology, however, considering that we have a Mercury retrograde in this sign, which it will be stationing direct, and then a new moon in this sign, or this decan, and we also have Mars in a trine to Jupiter in Jupiter's decan of Pisces, which is signified by this cocky looking dude. So there's a sort of sense of a lot of aggression and bravado and war, but at the more local level, we're making changes at a more minute level by abolishing daylight savings time. But there's something about it which is like, we're abolishing it, but not now. We're going to do one last daylight savings time, and then next time when we set our clocks back, we're not going to be that's when we're not going to do it, apparently. So there's something about it where we're abolishing it, but we did it one last time. And so I'm sort of, part of what astrology is, that there's these certain seasonal changes that are like, but when we have daylight savings time, the clocks move an hour. It's like, instead of a gradual season change, you're like, oh my God, everything is automatic. Like everything, like I was taking my dog for a walk, and we were used to going for a walk after dinner, and it'd be kind of dark out. And then all of a sudden, daylight savings time, the last one happens, and it's like going for a walk after dinner, and it's like full daylight. And I have to admit, like I don't think I'm like a vampire, or like I'm a goth that I'm like going to shrivel up in the sunlight. But there is an interesting thing where they say that your melatonin, like your body producing melatonin to help you sleep, is affected by the amount of vitamin D and all this kind of stuff. It's quite better to be getting more sunlight, but it's just like you're having your whole psychochemistry affected by your daily habits, and then we're going to have like this big, like, oh, all of a sudden everything's lighter by an hour, and you're just going to be like, you're just going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to, and this is the kind of thing about, like, I kind of get the sense that there's this there's something about, with Saturn and Neptune in Aries and the spring equinox, and the idea that, if we think about this as a symbolical idea of spring equinox, which is a highly charged, highly contentious kind of point, because it's used for a number of things, not only to mark the beginning of the spring, but to mark the fact that there's a drift between this point and the zodiac, in terms of the constellations, has given rise to the idea of the precession of the equinoxes, which, if you're actually serious about astrology, there's something about as we have developed since the time of, Carl Jung and all that kind of stuff. If you read Carl Jung talking about the age of Aquarius, he takes it very seriously. But in more recent academic studies, it is shown that the age of Aquarius, there's certain things where people, basic esotericists, sort of come up with these ideas, and there's a tendency to project them backwards across history and kind of believe that your idea has more historical precedent than it really does. And the thing about the idea, like, the precession of the equinoxes and the age of Aquarius could just be a bunch of astrologers at a certain period of time tripping and projecting this thing across the aeons, when maybe that was never really the point of it. And so there's only there's something about but there's this whole idea that if you believe in the age of Aquarius as a myth, that, or a story, a fiction, then it could be like the fiction which creates the truth, right? Or the art which creates the reality, or like the fairy tale which creates the mundane circumstance, or something like that, right? And that there could be even without Age of Aquarius, there could be a larger attempt to tell stories about the time we're in, the turning of the ages, that kind of stuff. We're here, we're talking about a new moon in Pisces. This point of this video is to go down in a more minute detail and look at, well, basically the point is that at this level, we're talking about making big changes, such as abolishing daylight savings time. Personally, if you're trying to do this kind of stuff at a time when there's a Mercury retrograde in Pisces, after eclipse season, during eclipse season, like, it just, to me, seems like not the best time to do it. At the same time, it's also just like, there's also this kind of thing about whatever I'm trying to do here as an astrologer kind of taking its cues from being a weatherman, right? Whereas a normal weatherman would be like a meteorologist and tell you about, let's say, the atmospheric river, right? This is another thing, is that there's certain jargon or terminology that, to me, starts to feel a little bit like Orwellian newspeak, because can you guys remember 20 or 30 years ago anybody talking about an atmospheric river? No. Apparently, we're abolishing daylight savings time, and we're also just going to invent up these new words and new ideas, like we're going to have a river of atmosphere. We're going to have a torrent of vibes, an avalanche of moody, atmosphere to just flood you out, right, in the middle of Pisces season, right, or the end of Pisces season, I should say. As we approach the sun converges Saturn, we're gonna have a big river of atmosphere to just flood you out with rain and overcast, stormy weather and stuff like this. Some other local things going on. Actually, I don't know if I should talk about local politics, but there's a certain popular dishwasher turned politician, Sean Orr, is suing Vancouver Mayor Ken Sims for falsely accusing him of handing out drugs on Christmas. As a perverted, bastardization of, what a good Christian should be doing by being generous and giving, like Ken Sims created this sort of a fairy tale that his political rivals were not even drug dealers, but people who would just give away drugs for Christmas, like they're the Santa Claus of the underground drug consumption community, right? And so this is to counteract this kind of, there's basically a kind of political mud throwing going on, but in the midst of like Mercury retrograde in Pisces, where everybody is basically just kind of tripping and you don't really know what's real. And for example, another thing about this is that I'm reading Naomi Klein's book Doppelganger. I'm almost finished that one. In Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, there's this idea that in the media world, where there's a certain media hallucination, media daydream or something like that, it could take many different forms. It could take the form, for example, the main inspiration of the book comes from the fact that there's a meme that happened where Naomi Wolf, people kept confusing Naomi Wolf and Naomi Klein because they're both popular authors around the same age from the same time period, named Naomi, who wrote books, I guess, right? And that for some reason there's like this idea that whatever she was saying was getting drowned out by this other Naomi. And I mean, I have the same issue too, because I have a name that's a lot of people named Dan, and there's another guy with an astrology channel named Dan that I'm like don't have any connection to or whatever like that. So it's tempted to like if you're a content creator or if you're doing anything on the internet to just see other people that have like the same name as you or like have something similar and feel like it's, if you were, let's say, there's a certain example of this where let's say the guy who wrote the Hellenistic astrology textbook that I learned when I was doing my natal chart certification course, Chris Brennan, does this popular podcast, the astrology podcast. And before COVID, they would have these things where they would do like a live session where you would like go to the local pub and do an astrology, like in-person astrology event, right? And so there's kind of thing is like, if you were to do this and just be like, okay, you have your little local Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, wherever it is, Denver, Colorado astrology thing at the pub, and you have your scene is defined by people with faces and bodies who occupy a space and do a thing, and you put the microphone and you do this kind of, versus when you're on the internet, it's like you're dealing with the whole goddamn world, right? There's a whole goddamn world of stuff out there. And so it seems like there's much, and the algorithm is going to sort things by similarity of like, similar looks, similar styles, similar names, and so it's much easier. You're going to find your doppelganger online a lot quicker. But then also in the midst of this, we have the AI thing, which is now apparently, popular intellectuals, popular speakers are being targeted by bot accounts to create a bunch of fake content using their stuff to pollute it, so that basically instead of like, if you're trying to do something original and creative or whatever, they're going to be like, well, let's just take what you're doing and then make a shittier version of that and then put that out there, and then people won't think very highly of you, because instead of looking at your original stuff, we'll create our own artificial straw man, basically, so that we can just have this puppet show of like, oh, look, this stupid guy named Dan and this stupid guy. And so instead of going to your actual local pub and having a thing where real people go and interact with each other, we're just gonna have a stupid astrologer named this guy and a stupid astrologer, and we're gonna have them fight, and then you don't actually get to participate in it. You just get to like watch, and then you get to like, pledge a donation to them. And that, if you're not even at the level where you're live streaming with all the jing, 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 like, money coming in or whatever, then, you're not even in the same league as them, right? And part of the reason why I'm choosing to do it this way rather than that is that I'm not under a financial pressure to be getting all this money coming in from streaming, because I'm on disability for schizophrenic psychotic illness. And one of the interesting things about this is that once you have that as a disability, people they basically think that you have that for life. So there's no one's going to come by and say that I'm not a schizophrenic. They're just going to be like, okay, you've got your schizo, you're basically disabled for life, and because I live in a socialist country, I have public health care, I'm not under so much pressure to make money. So I end up doing it more like this way, first of all, and I'm not very competitive in terms of, trying to make this a source of income, right? And because I'm doing like that, I'm kind of like getting lost here, I think. But so there's this whole thing about the internet and the problem of AI creating bogus versions of material to use as an easily attackable straw man, or having this idea that instead of having a real life situation where you're dealing with real people, you're dealing with like if there's a like there's also it's difficult with when it comes to like being a musician as well, because it's actually really interesting because for one thing, they used to use YouTube and streaming to do like billboard stuff, right? To be like, we're going to count the number of plays on YouTube and then that count for a billboard chart. But apparently they've decided to stop doing this. And what I find really interesting about this is that one of the things that I like to do as a hobby when I'm not doing astrology content is that I like making electronic music. And one of the this phenomenon that I'm trying to get to, which I think I think it does have to do with the astrology, because Pisces is a mutable sign. It comes at the end of the zodiac. A lot of people will say it has a lot to do with the collective, right? You're just one fish amongst a school of fish, like the pool of fish in the crowd, and we all come to go see whoever is the way that the media could be like the water that we're all swimming in. We're all living in a media saturated environment, so the water that we're swimming in is like the old the just like the classic you guys know that Seattle screamo band, the Blood Brothers, Mr. Electric Ocean. We're all just little fishes swimming in an ocean of electricity being saturated and streamed, like it's what they call it, streaming, right? Streams of the electric ocean, right? It's like it's kind of horrible in a way, right? Like because it's like we're all also being zapped and electrocuted while we're swimming in this toxic mess, basically. And this is I'm going to clarify that at the beginning of this video I was saying that I have a certain a certain lack of enthusiasm for producing content right now, and that mainly has to do with producing YouTube content or doing things on the internet at all, because basically like I'm trying to say, like it's as if you're going to a virtual, instead of going to a real place where people are doing this in real life, you're going to a virtual space where if you can't really have any but more than one person with the same first name, basically. We're going to have, so everybody's on a first name basis, but but because our attention is fried, we can only be like, as if you went down to the pub and you're going to talk to Steve and James and Susie, but now Steve and James and Susie are these like bloated celebrity, like, super, like they're like deified people that rule the globe, right? And that we don't go down to the community thing, have the community thing happening anymore. You have to be playing it out at this global level and have the super, like a rock star ego, basically, right? Like as if you're like Joni Mitchell or something, right? Joni Mitchell is significant because at the time when Joni Mitchell started to like write her own songs, it would be like Bob Dylan and shit like that, and you would like write a song like Mr. Tambourine Man or something, and you would get all these other bands would climb the ladder in order to gain the right to be the ones that could cover Mr. Tambourine Man and try to get nobody really liked the way Bob Dylan sings, so you get all these cover bands and stuff like this. And Joni Mitchell, rather than doing that, was just going to be like do her own shit. And nobody wants to do Joni Mitchell covers because they're all super personal to her own little life. And so it's like you are kind of like, then there's a lot of resentment towards this, is like, who does that bitch think she is that she gets it? But there's certain, I tend to defend people. There's a lot of people in different scenes might also take aim at people like, let's say, Artie Lang, for people having these rock star egos, but there's something about it where it takes a certain, like, not everybody's able to do that, right? Or not everybody wants to be in that position, right? So with that in mind, war, basically, right? Yeah, there's gonna are we going to World War III or not? Do you want to be the rock star ego that uses World War III as a way to climb your way to, like, am I gonna be like, do the Macaulay Culkin face, like, oh no, Oh, here, maybe this will be the thumbnail. Oh, World War III. Oh no, guys, we're going to. And then, so that'll rocket me to the top of the thumbnails because I'm looking like you have to degrade yourself by looking like a moron and come up with the dumbest version of yourself so that if somebody wanted to attack you like a straw man, it would be really easy. Because if you present your best stuff, you're never going to make it to the top, right? You have to create a cheesy ass straw man version of whatever you're doing to be popular. And in the midst of this, we have a war going on where the countries that are at war are telling their population not to post videos, not to report what's going on because they don't want the enemies knowing whether you got a hit. As if, you're playing that game Battleship and you get, you're taking random shots and it's like, oh, you sunk my battleship. They don't want to give people accurate information whether they're what has been hit, what hasn't been. And at the same time, they have this new capacity for generating a lot of bullshit. And then there's those other, on top of this, that there's a whole basic like disinformation, cyber war going on. And this to me has been, it's like, you're, oh my God. There's kind of thing where we're going to announce we've abolished daylight savings time. And we're going to announce that apparently, Trump's announcing that he's already won the war in Iran. It's kind of this kind of thing where everything feels like a fuzzy daydream, and that it's kind of natural. There's all these philosopher dudes who talk about like wanting to trust what's going on, and it's like if your president does pull some shit like this and tells you that he's won the war in Iran, do you trust him? And then meanwhile, all the politicians are telling their people not to like tell if they sunk your battleship or not, and so they're telling you can't trust them, right? And then meanwhile, we're going to anything that you are doing. Have you ever talked to a person who, instead of trying to listen to understand what you're trying to communicate, is only going to listen to build a straw man that's easy for them to light on fire so they don't have to listen to you, right? Like this is, I think, the issues that we're being faced with under these astrological circumstances. Having a river of atmosphere at a local level doesn't help at all, I'm afraid. But this is whatever, man. I'm trying to at least tell you what it's like. Trying to relay just don't shoot the messenger. This is how it is for a new moon in Pisces. Thanks for watching. Tell your friends about Dan Astrology. I'm gonna be I have a NeoCities website. I have a Substack blog. I'm not teaching any webinars, and stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.